Mary Lou McDonald, please.
Thank you, Count Corla. Count Corla, can I first of all just record the shock felt across the world at the natural disaster and devastation that we've witnessed in Turkey and Syria, and we extend our solidarity to all those hurt and injured and urge the global community to rally to the support of these devastated communities. Taoiseach, last Thursday the European Central Bank increased interest rates for the 5th time since July of last year. For the almost 200,000 households with a tracker mortgage, this results in an immediate and significant impact. The high street banks, as you know, Bank of Ireland and AIB, are starting to increase their rates, and vulture funds are increasing rates aggressively, leaving some paying interest rates of 7.5%. The net result of this is that tens of thousands of workers and families are paying hundreds of euros extra per month compared to this time last year. And for those with even modest mortgages, this can equate to thousands of euros extra per year. This, on top of a cost of living crisis that, mortgages aside, is putting real pressure on household finances. The cost of heating is up, the cost of filling the car, the cost of everyday shopping is up, and the list goes on. For those whose mortgage bills are skyrocketing, this is causing massive stress and anxiety. Is cúis mór strús d'oibrithe agus de cheamhlaí é seo, so caiimiid rud éigean a dhéanamh anois. One person I spoke to this morning told me that their annual mortgage has now increased by over €3,000, and that's before the increase due next month. Taoiseach, it is now time to introduce timely, targeted and temporary mortgage interest relief to support workers and families who are to the pin of their collar. This evening, we in Sinn Féin will bring a motion to the Dáil that provides a meaningful solution for households that have had to contend with 5 interest rate hikes in less than a year. Our proposal to reintroduce mortgage interest relief will be in place for 12 months to absorb a portion of borrowers' increased interest costs. This relief would amount to 30% of the increased interest cost compared to June of last year, with a maximum benefit of €1,500. And of course, as with all measures to combat the cost of living crisis, the state, we understand, cannot cover the entire cost, but it can lend a helping hand, and it should. It should do this now. This is what is needed, Taoiseach. You ruled out this approach when my colleague Ceachta Pearse Doherty put this proposal to you in December, and since then the situation has worsened and worsened considerably. And now we see tens of thousands of workers and families needing support. So I want to ask you, Taoiseach, will you support our proposal, and will mortgage interest relief be reintroduced without delay?
Taoiseach.
Thank you, Count Corla. And just at the outset, I wanted to join with Deputy McDonald in expressing my sorrow to the people of Turkey and Syria who've experienced a terrible earthquake, and to express my solidarity to Ireland's Turkish and Syrian community, some of whom have been directly affected by that, some of whom are mourning family members, others who are worried about family members and friends. And as part of an initial response, the Taoiseach Micheál Martin has allocated €2 million in emergency assistance to the Red Cross and the UN to help with the effort, and we will be in touch with the authorities in Turkey and Syria to offer more help if we can. Ceann Comhairle Harla Crit Talún Miltoch san Tíria agus an Turk for det míle Dini Bosch agus Tur Galorgi Dini Gertathe freisin. Son an Rialtas agus son Winch na Heron tá Brown an Down Uring. Carroy an Rialtas by €1 million airfoil mar takeíocht chun Carrow Hort don Winter an Turk agus Winter an Tíria. Just in relation to the Deputy's question, and I want to thank her for raising this very important issue today in the Dáil. As the House will appreciate, the formulation and implementation of monetary policy is an independent matter for the Central Bank, and the European Central Bank acts independently of the governments of Europe, and governments don't set interest rates. The rise in interest rates, though, are most unwelcome for anyone who's borrowing, particularly homeowners and particularly those with tracker mortgages. Roughly 200,000 people who now almost every other month receive a letter in the post telling them that their monthly repayments are going up and up and up. And while they had been relatively low by historical standards, they've risen a lot in the last year or so. And that is something I think that all of us will have experienced from our constituency work. The European Central Bank's Governing Council has indicated that interest rates will have to rise at a steady pace to reach levels that are sufficient to ensure a return to inflation of around 2%. And I think it is important to acknowledge that the reason why the European Central Bank is increasing interest rates is to bring inflation down and to restore price stability, and that is something that will benefit everyone. I do hope that we're approaching the peak of the current interest rate cycle, but there's no guarantee that that is the case, and it is something that we will discuss at European Council tomorrow when I'm in Brussels. I don't know if the Governor of the Central Bank is able to attend this meeting, but certainly it's something that we will discuss at head of government and head of state level, because I know it's a matter of concern across the continent. The government is currently reviewing what more we can do to alleviate the rising cost of living, of which higher interest rates are part, and we'll be able to make an announcement around the middle of the month as to what else we can do to help with the cost of living as we go into the spring. The changed interest rate environment won't have a uniform impact on all borrowers, and depending on particular situations, such as individual contracts, some borrowers will experience higher increases than others. Thankfully, the average Irish interest rate on new mortgages is now below the Eurozone average. Even though it had been higher than the Eurozone average, we now have the third lowest mortgage rates in the Eurozone. And a significant portion of new mortgages, in fact over 90% of new mortgages, are now fixed rate mortgages, and this will go some way to protect borrowers. But I know that's of no solace at all to people who are tracker mortgage holders. Mortgage interest relief was phased out between 2009 and 2020, and at its peak the relief cost over 700 million euros a year. It's not something we're currently considering, but it's not something that we rule out for the future. It is the kind of thing that we would do normally in the context of a budget, when we have to weigh up many other choices and options to help people, and can't do them all, can only ever do a small number. But certainly if Sinn Féin has a proposal and wants to produce a paper on it, we would be happy to consider that, to cost it, to work out the various practicalities and to issue a more formal response.
Deputy McDonald.
Thank you, Count Corley. Thank you for that, Taoiseach. Well, as you say, there are 186,000 borrowers on tracker mortgages, 129,000 on standard variable, more than 113,000 with non-banks and vulture funds. And some borrowers are being affected very dramatically and very immediately with these 5 hikes so far and more to come. And I just want to say to you, Taoiseach, I don't believe that government should hesitate on this matter. I mean, the reality, as we know, is that families and workers were struggling anyhow with a cost of living crisis. But for lots of families, this now has really, as they say, put the tin hat on things for them. And we need to see government intervention. So I want to appeal to you not alone to support our proposal and our motion this evening, but also to include targeted, time-bound mortgage interest relief as the package of measures that needs to be introduced now. Don't imagine for a second, Taoiseach, that we can wait, or that families who are struggling can wait for the next budget. That is completely unreal.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy. As I said earlier, these interest rates increases are most unwelcome, particularly for people who have tracker mortgages or are seeing their variable mortgage rates go up and go up dramatically. It would be wrong of me not to acknowledge that the European Central Bank is raising interest rates in order to bring inflation down and to restore price stability. That is why it is being done. But unfortunately, the impact on people who have tracker mortgages is very severe. We're happy to consider any proposals that the Sinn Féin party wants to make, happy to examine them and to cost them. We would need to know the cost, and that is significant. And that does matter, particularly out of the context of the budget cycle. And secondly as well, we would have to examine it from a holistic point of view as well. Mortgage rates in Ireland have been at historic low levels now for a number of years, and in some cases people who were paying very low rates on trackers are now paying rates that other people have actually been paying for quite some time, and we'd have to take that into account in any benefit or concession that we may give to people.
Taoiseach, 4 months ago, a terrible tragedy engulfed the village of Creasla, and we've seen the loss of 10 precious lives and others severely injured. And since then, the whole nation has wrapped their arms around that village, and particularly the families of those who lost loved ones. But unfortunately, Taoiseach, today some of those families are deeply, deeply distraught, and they're distraught at the fact that TG4 is planning to broadcast a documentary tonight. Taoiseach, a number of the families have directly contacted myself. I know they've been directly contacted to TG4. They're pleading with them not to air this documentary. They believe it's too raw, and the Garda investigation is still not concluded. Now, I know TG4 and the excellent service they provide and the documentaries, and nobody is questioning the professionalism, the fact that the families and the tragedy will be dealt with sensibly, and the story of those heroes who were the first responders do need to be told. But the families are asking, indeed begging, that this is postponed until the Garda investigation is over. And can I ask you to join with me in asking TG4 to reconsider this matter with the families at the centre?
Thanks, Deputy, and just want to once again extend my condolences to the people of Creasla, who I know are still mourning, and for whom this tragedy is still very, very raw. And what I'd ask TG4 to do is to perhaps sit down with the families concerned, maybe consult with them, and having done that, make a decision as to whether or not they're going to postpone the airing of the documentary. I'm reluctant as head of government to tell any broadcaster what they should or should not broadcast. I don't want to get into that space, but I do hear what the families are saying, and I think we all feel their pain, and would ask at the very least that TG4 would sit down with their representatives and discuss the matter and hear their case and try to understand it.
Deputy Willie O'G.
Thanks, Cahill. I want to ask the Taoiseach for an update on the surgical hub which the government have committed to provide in the